Good.
This arrow right
This
here.
one, it didn't move it. There we go. So those are that's the basic SCI points that I just talked about. Now, that's what I just said, so we don't have to read it. And the idea that I think is so crucial to understand that space-time is not an absolute, unconditioned foundation of the universe. It comes into being at a certain level as the universal consciousness, the universal all-pervading consciousness expresses itself in space and time, because space and time and finite existence are necessary for it to become fully aware of its own infinity and unbounded and eternal, timeless nature. It's as consciousness. Well, I don't know if that makes any sense, but when we transcend, when we go to the deepest level of the mind, we go beyond space and time. To be awake, I mean, when we really have the full experience of unbounded pure consciousness, to be awake in a timeless, unbounded field of consciousness. And in that timeless, unbounded field of consciousness, all laws of nature, the blueprint of the universe is structured, and it's accessible to anyone and everyone who goes within. And once you understand that, you can understand every philosopher from Aristotle and Plato and Spinoza, Plotinus, Hegel, everybody. They were all talking about that level of experience. And what makes it interesting is that they were talking about it in such a way that you can readily understand the genius of Maharishi and the way he's brought out this knowledge and made it accessible to everybody, because he has made accessible the experience that the greatest minds of history were describing. Now, how did they get the experience? Well, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra says it so clearly in Tom's translation anyway, Tom's brilliant translation. Yoga is the complete settling of the activity of the mind. That's really the first substantive sutra. The complete settling of the activity of the mind. Aristotle talks about, he says, of all places in his physics, knowledge is gained when the mind settles down to rest. Same principle, settling of the activity of the mind. In ancient Egypt, the scribe Ani, who wrote what is called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's not a book, it's a scroll, and it's not about dead people at all. It's about eternal life that Ani experienced. And he said, I have become the eternal mind. I am one with the eternal gods. And he says, how do we experience that? He says, I have settled myself. I have attained the still heart. I have settled myself. So that Ani in Egypt, and then you go to the Far East, to the Taoist tradition of Lao Tzu, he gained this unbounded knowledge of the whole of creation by settling the mind as the night sky settles, as the night sky settles in the evening. It's like it's settling down of the mind that allows us to experience that consciousness that's not hidden, because consciousness is hidden by the activity of the mind. And when the activity of the mind settles completely, that unbounded consciousness that is there at the basis of the mind is directly experienced. It experiences itself, it knows itself. It's always there, knowing itself. And in knowing itself, it generates the whole of Atma, Ved, Vishnu, Brahm, the whole thing comes out of that level. And it's accessible to anyone who goes within. So we all have access to that. And this is why this university is really a very, very great university, because it's the first university in the world, the modern world anyway, to make this level of experience available to everybody and to explicate it and objectively verify it and logically explain it and practically apply it to create a better world. So it's a very, very important kind of knowledge that we have, and we have to understand it fully. And to understand it fully, I think the best way is to begin by looking at the ancient and modern philosophers from Plato, Aristotle, Descartes, so on, Hegel especially, Plotinus especially. They all give exact description. Well, I'll tell you, Plato, Plotinus, Proclus, Hegel, the Chaldean oracles, and about a half a dozen other places describe very exactly the mechanics of creation and the self-interacting dynamics of consciousness, almost in identical ways that Maharishi describes it. And what does that tell us? It tells us that this knowledge is based on experience, not speculative theory, not conjecture, not an Eastern point of view or a Western point of view or a paradigm of this or that kind. It's knowledge based on experience, grounded on experience. And this experience is universal. And that's what I'm wanting to show in my books, by showing one by one, from the Rig Veda to Bertrand Russell and Wittgenstein, that these people were all describing pure consciousness. Even Russell and Wittgenstein, you think, no way, these are British empiricists. It's true, but they had experience in their early days when they were young, and they described their experience. And then Wittgenstein despaired of ever talking about it, and Russell began to doubt his experience. So he went back into science, and Wittgenstein went off trying to find a monastery where he could pursue this, but he never found it. These were frustrated people who had no traditional knowledge of how to get there. The knowledge of how to get to that place is very precise. It's very delicate. It's the ultimate knowledge, how to transcend, how to get the mind settled to that most deepest level where we can experience directly the pure form of consciousness in its simplest state.